Good day. Today Ellen and I will be presenting on the topic, what's your grief? This is kind of different doing it this way. I'm used to talking to a group of people in the same room, but we must adapt. We've been doing these talks together for about 8 years now on different topics related to grief and bereavement. For my part, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is from personal experience. First off, my name is Robert, and never Bob. I'm semi-retired, I turned 60 this year, I live alone, and I like it that way. My wife Barb died of cancer in January of 2008. Because of the Palliative end-of-life program, it was made possible for her to die at home, and for that I am forever grateful. I completed the Palliative Manitoba's Compassionate Care course in 2009 and have been volunteering for Palliative Manitoba since. A quote from the play I never sang for my father. Death ends a life, but it does not end a relationship. A relationship that struggles on in the survivor's mind towards some resolution which it may never find. I do not know and will never know your grief. I do know mine though, and I know it very well. I can share my knowledge of my grief with you, and our grief will be similar in many ways, and different in many ways as well. Grief is unique to the individual. Grief will be as unique as the relationship you had with the person that had died. Another side of it, we can never assume that any relationship we see was like a Hallmark card. Not all family dynamics are like the Waltons. Of course, I'm dating myself when I mention the Waltons, an old television show from years ago. In some instances, the death of a partner or a parent can bring relief and freedom to the survivor. I like to say, you don't really know anyone until you have lived with them. Never assume, and try not to judge. It's been 12 years ago, almost 13 years now since Barb died. And in my grief, for me, everything was gone. It was all a numb gray fog, and I was in shock. We had plans. We were going to retire together, and yes, we wanted to grow old together. We wanted to continue doing what we were doing. Painting a room together, building a deck together, going grocery shopping together, cooking a meal together, sleeping in our bed together, and dancing in the living room late on a Friday night together. And now it was gone. There was no more we or us. Fear and uncertainty, another part of my grief. Never in my life would I have ever imagined that I would be here. Getting up in the morning, I was just going through the motions. The house was empty, and I knew there were things I had to do. Picking up her ashes. I had gotten a call from the funeral home, and they said they were ready to be picked up. I drove over to pick the ashes up. I cannot remember the drive over there. Paid the cremation bill when I got there and drove home with the ashes on the passenger seat beside me. And regarding the ashes, I knew the ashes were not her. And I don't mean that it was a mix-up with the ashes. They were her ashes, but the ashes were not her. What I mean by that is her body was not her. To me, Barb was her memories, her intelligence, her logic, her passion, her emotions. That was her. I remember when she died. I knew she had stopped breathing because near the end, as her death came closer, her breathing had changed. It became more congested, and now it was silent. I checked for a pulse, the breathing, the eyes, rubbed the breastbone. Nothing. I looked at her, and I knew she was no longer there. Yes, her body was there, but I knew she was gone. Her mind was gone. Who she is was gone. Her essence was gone. In grief, I went through the motions day to day. Not much of anything to do, other than knowing she was gone. But hopeful that this was a dream, that I would wake up and she would be alive, sitting at her sewing machine in the dining room once again. A quote from Detective Harry Bosch: "There is nothing like being wanted or valued." I believe that grief can be a cushion, and is a cushion, like an airbag in a car, to protect you from the impact of the intensity of what has just happened. A fog and numbness that protects. One of the things that came up after she was gone is that she had told me she wanted her clothes donated to the Asylum Mission. And that was accomplished, and it was a good feeling to carry out her wish. The grief stayed on. I watched television, I ate bad food, smoked, and did not care. Another quote I would like that I found on the internet is you cannot heal people, not even the people you love. You cannot make choices for them. You cannot rescue them. You can be there to listen so they won't journey alone. You can loan them your map, but the trip is theirs. Just be there to listen. I had some literature at home from Palliative, Manitoba regarding grief seminars. And I thought, okay, I will go. I was in pain. I wanted something to do, something to distract me from my pain. So I went. At the first grief seminar that I went to, the topic was hope in grief. Not a good topic for me at the time. And I felt that hope in grief could not exist. I could not comprehend what they were talking about. Early days. The next month I went, the topic was different. It was more relatable to what I was feeling at the time. As I attended more grief seminars, and over time, I began to notice the other people there. People like me. Some whose loss was very recent. Others whose loss took place some time ago. This was a club that nobody wanted to join. At the grief seminars is where I met Ellen, where she was volunteering. She listened to me, and that was what I needed at that time. Someone who had experienced the loss of a spouse and understood what I was talking about, understood the confusion and the anger. Family and friends can be there to listen, but it's really not the same. The empathy is not there, and they know you too well sometimes. I do have one family member who has the ability just to listen. No judgment, no advice. He would just let me rant, and I needed that. Today, we discuss many things without fear of offending the other. We discuss religion and politics and movies and history, and it's nice to have that freedom. As for my other siblings, I see them about every 2 years. They are both retired, and they have their church community. We really have nothing in common except our dead parents. For me, the grief is not just a sadness that passes over time. Sometimes you get over, so it's not something that you just get over. I live with it. Over time, the intensity fades, but it is never gone. And I do not believe in closure. When you lose somebody you've loved with all your emotion and passion, and when they die, part of you dies along with them. It is the price you pay, the chance you take in a caring, loving relationship. The pain of grief reflects the quality of the relationship. I guess you can avoid grief all your life if you never love anyone. But that is just not possible. Not possible because we are human. If someone ever offered to me, I will take your grief and pain away by erasing your memories of Barb, it would be like you never knew her. No Barb, no pain. I would say no. I never want to forget her. I never want to forget what we had. And I'm okay with the grief. Today, my grief now is memories, a lot of it. One particular is Barb and I used to do our grocery shopping after work together. I would always get to the store first, and I would stand inside looking out the window, looking at the parking lot waiting for her. She would see me waiting behind the glass and she would smile and wave. We did it the same every time, and it became our ritual. I smile whenever I recall that ritual that we created all those years ago. At the same time, it makes me sad that we cannot do that anymore. So you see, 12, almost 13 years on, the grief still lives in me. Yet it has evolved over time, and I can live with it. The memories do bring a smile to my face, and sometimes makes me a bit sad at the same time. The human emotion is a juggling act, and your juggling skills get better as time passes. And that is my grief. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellen Jacobs. I am a bereavement support volunteer with Palliative Manitoba. And this is my part on the topic, what's your grief? Until we are faced with death, its resulting uncertainty about everything, and the upheaval that it causes in one's life and world, we cannot really fathom what grief is all about. We truly cannot understand grief until it happens to us and we walk in those shoes. Robert has said that this is not a club one really wants to be a part of, not by choice anyway. If we were meeting in person today, it is here that I would ask you to share your story, your grief. How and why did the death of your loved one cause you to enter this unfamiliar world of grief and mourning? As we cannot do that at this time, I shall share with you part of my grief journey. How am I going to do this on my own are the words I shared with my sister driving home from the hospital after the death of my husband in June 2001. A day, a month, and a year that I will never forget. I recall feeling like it was all a dream, especially the first few days. Someone please wake me up. I can recall preparing for Pete's funeral, identifying his body, and thinking, that really isn't him. His spirit has gone, but where? Reality slowly started settling in several weeks later. No, he really wasn't coming home. I could not hear the key in the lock. I recall feeling truly alone, as no one around me at that time had experienced the death of a spouse. I saw an advertisement for a bereavement support group in the newspaper late that summer. The group was co-sponsored by Palliative Manitoba. I can remember the lady who walked in behind me that first evening. She was like me, in shock, alone, and wondering what on earth we were doing there. That bereavement support group was a godsend for me. I found out that I was not the only one feeling shocked, lost, and alone. That the pain of grief and asking why me was normal. My feelings were validated. We talked, we shared our stories, we cried, and we were supported. Since then, I have experienced the death of my parents. As I continue to mourn the death of my mom, which occurred just over a year ago, I remind myself that it is normal to experience the emotion that I am feeling. There is a sadness associated with her death and the guilt of wondering if I did all that I could for her as she lived with me the last 15 months of her life. Sharing our story permits me to move through our grief. I must express the emotions that are within. Otherwise, a sorrow that has not vent in tears makes other organs weep. I remind myself that there is no way around grief except through it. We will all experience grief at some point in our lives. It is an inescapable reality of our human existence. We are not abnormal or weak because we experience grief. We are touching the depths of the human experience, the abyss between what we want and what is. Can you protect yourself from experiencing the pain of grief? No, because you cannot live a life without loving someone. It is timely to review the definition of these three words. The word loss can refer to a loss of many different things. That is, loss of a pet, loss of a job, loss of a family member or a friend. The most important loss in grief, though, is the loss of the relationship with the person who has died. Grief is what you experience in your inner being, your body, mind, soul, and spirit after someone you love dies. It is a normal and natural response to loss. Mourning is the outward expression of the grief that is within. It is grief gone public. It is reaching out for help, remembering, sharing, and crying. Until we are faced with death, its resulting uncertainty about everything, and the upheaval that it causes in one's life and world, we cannot really fathom what grief is all about. We truly cannot understand grief until it happens to us and we walk in those shoes. That is why people, loved ones, and friends do not understand what it is the bereaved person is truly experiencing. People often lack insight into their behavior towards the bereaved. Grief is uncomfortable for others. Often people are at a loss as to what to say. Most find silence awkward. They want to comfort you, but they just do not know how. They may say, carry on, keep your chin up, keep busy, get back to your old normal, feel better. I do not like seeing you this way, and I do not know how to help you or how to fix this. People forget that the grief that you are feeling is not about them, but rather it is about you, the person who is mourning. It is important to just listen, be present. That is, do not think about your grocery list or what is coming up next in your day. In order to reconcile their feelings and emotions, the bereaved need to talk. They need to share their stories. Encourage repetition of their story. Sharing allows for things to change ever so slightly. Over the long term, this permits healing of their broken heart and hurting head. They are not looking for advice, nor should advice be given. The opportunity to talk allows for reconciliation of concerning feelings, emotions, and issues. As much as you want to forego this labor, whatever issues you do not address at this time will lie there waiting to be resolved. When feelings are expressed outwardly, they can be released. When they are held onto, they just fester and keep on hurting. Remember, suffering is what happens when we avoid the pain. Society is uncomfortable with grief and mourning. At 6 months to a year, one can expect to be asked why it is that you are not over your grief yet. Do you ever get over your grief completely? No, as you do not ever forget your loved one. The physical relationship becomes one of memory. You do in time learn to live with it. And no, you are not going crazy, even though you may feel like you are. The intensity of your feelings and emotions make you feel like you are going crazy. They are just so much more intensified. Grief comes in one size, extra large. If we tuck it away in the bottom drawer where it never sees the light of day, it remains exactly the same. On the other hand, if we wear it, feel it, talk about it, and share it with others, it is likely that it will become faded, shrunk, and worn, or simply no longer fit. So what is your grief? It is different for each of us, as we are as unique in our grief and mourning as we are in living our day-to-day lives. What we do with our grief and the work of mourning is our choice. It can be looked at in a negative or a positive light. You may choose to stick your head in the sand in hopes that your grief will go away, or you can do the work of mourning. Each person will respond to their grief in their own way. There is no right or wrong way to do this. Your experience on this journey will be a reflection of your personal style, the relationship you had with the person who died, your internal and social resources, and your past history of coping with adversity. In ways that are both personal and unique to you alone, you will gradually integrate your loss into the framework of your life, as you slowly give up the reality that included the physical presence of your loved one. Please do not be afraid to rebuild a life of your own. Have hope. I understand that at this time that may be difficult. Trust in your emotions, your imagination, your courage, and your intuition. Trust in your freedom to make choices, to learn, and to live. You will evolve. Remember that there is no rule book, no time frame, no judgment. Grief is as individual as a fingerprint. Do what is right for your soul. Thank you.